I always say self-sabotage is misguided self-love, and you go on the diet and you just can't stick with it because there's this thing that just won't let you.
This couple had a $10 million marital estate. I mean, even after debt was considered, if they paid off all their debt, they would have $10 million. My client was so fearful, still is so fearful. And it's that constant thinking worst case scenario, and truly does not feel security and like they are going to be okay. And what's interesting is the level of fear is the same with these high asset clients and the folks who really don't have much.
Yeah. Welcome to A Holistic Dose, real talk from two unfiltered friends who've redefined success in midlife, found our glow up, and want to inspire you to do the same. I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Jeanette.
For today's topic, we have a very special guest, Greta, and I'll tell you more about her in a minute, but we're going to be focusing on how catastrophizing, aka spiraling into worst case scenario thinking, keeps us paralyzed in our life and stuck in toxic relationships, careers we hate, and things that just no longer serve us. So I'd love to introduce Greta. So Greta, you are an intuitive energy coach who supports overworked and underloved women who are looking to heal their hearts and attract love and a life that they desire. So tell us more about that.
Yes. So I have been supporting women in the online space for about 8 years, and primarily through a form of energy psychology. One of my main modalities is EFT tapping, or emotional freedom technique. And tapping, you tap on, you look funny and silly, but we're actually tapping on, it's a form, it's connected to ancient Chinese medicine. And you're tapping on your acupressure points that are connected to meridians in the body, that are connected to organ systems and emotions, where we store emotions, process emotions in the body. And this is also heavily connected to our limbic system in the brain, which is responsible for our fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and you know what else, the other F. And so it puts us into this more of our animalistic reactivity part of our mind versus having full access to conscious creation and choosing from, a place of desire. So through my own life's journey, I tend to attract women who are feeling this space of they're doing it all. I would call it operating from more of a masculine state of being, where they are, maybe the breadwinner in the family or in a relationship, or they don't know how to receive. They're feeling underloved. They're not feeling their whole radiant essence, which you guys talk about, your glow up. And they don't even realize why it's happening. And through the imprinting of life and all of our experiences, we're building, those innate identity, our self-concept, and the behaviors that coincide with them. So I help women get clarity on what they do want to experience and see how we can work with beliefs and emotional reactivity and how that plays out in their co-creating with life.
Yeah. And I was going to say how I ended up finding you. I was trying to think back to that. So when you mentioned about what women desire in their life, it was in a Facebook group and somebody was asking for a dating coach. I remember, a relationship. Yeah. And I was like, oh, can you do this for me? And you're like, that's not kind of quite what I do. And then I just started working with you, and I have learned so much and referred you to my family members and friends. And, this will tee up to a little bit of what Jeanette's skepticism is, but so many people think about this as it's very woo-woo. And once you experience it and you go through it, you've been life-changing. So I even told Jeanette, I'm so excited to share my personal gift with you, Greta, because you've changed my life. But yeah, Jeanette, you had some thoughts around this.
Yeah. And so I am definitely skeptical. And I think that I can just say to the fellow skeptics out there, look, I'm representing the logical side, but we can learn from each other, right? Even if we're coming at things from very different angles, there's going to be value here. So I think it's going to be a great conversation because this really is a problem. I have a hard time saying this word, catastrophizing. Catastrophizing.
Catastrophizing, isn't it? I don't know.
I don't know either. I have a hard time.
Catastrophe.
Creating catastrophes in our minds. But yes, like I mean, it's such a huge problem with people getting stuck because they are creating the worst case scenario. And bottom line, I think like some of us, we all need different ways to deal with things, right? Like whatever works for you. And some people want, to focus on intuition, and others might want cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever. But I think find your way to deal with it. And
a lot of at the end of the day, a lot of the advice and things that I was explaining to Jeanette, the methods and the thoughts that you teach me through our working together, it's no different than what Mel Robbins or any of these other people are saying. It's just in how people are receiving it. It's approached a little bit differently, but there is still a core message there.
Well, I like to believe that we are, we're angels in human costumes having this human experience. And we are stuck between this innate knowing that there's something inside of us that is longing to feel connection and peace, or else we wouldn't feel the disconnection from it. The fact that we are experiencing the disconnection or the fear or the obsessive thinking means the opposite has to exist too. So we're balancing this internal knowing with a human experience and the human body and how it reacts. So a lot of what I teach is understanding human behavior, what's going on here, but how do you transmute it and transcend it? And I love, cognitive behavioral therapy and EFT tapping have been studied together, and the results that they have gotten from, there's a woman named Peta Stapleton, for those that are more logically and fact-based inclined. She has put EFT tapping on the map for specifically this reason, so we can get it into actual therapist office so it can have an impact. But it was measured against cognitive behavioral therapy, and the results are pretty much the same, but EFT tapping gets you the same result in half the time.
Interesting.
And why that is because in cognitive behavioral therapy, you are focused on behavioral change, but from the cognitive part of our mind. And that literally has the least amount of power when we are in these subconscious programs. And EFT tapping addresses the subconscious mind more than the cognitive mind. Both are necessary. You still have to take cognitive action and have the cognitive reasoning. But when you become obsessed or possessed by the fear or something subconscious that you're not even aware of, that's where the tapping works the magic. And it feels very woo-woo because you can't really measure it or identify it and make it real. But that is the measurement tool that they're trying to use in comparison to cognitive behavioral therapy, so you have something that you can grasp onto. So it cuts the time in half because you're working with both parts of the mind.
So let's define catastrophizing, to the word we cannot say. So
maybe. Word.
So
worst case scenario, yeah.
Worst case scenario. And Jeanette, where do you see a lot of your, this came up because we're working on your rebrand right now for your law firm, Atlanta Holistic Family Law. And I was asking you, to define, I have this board here. So what was the truth of your clients? And you stated that the biggest truths were, some of them were thinking the absolute worst. Now give us some examples of that.
Yes. And this is so common. And I will say I do it myself. And for myself, I think the root of it in my own life is anxiety. And I have a generalized anxiety. I'm medicated for it. And that actually very much helps. But that's kind of how I'm wired, is I myself will think, oh my God, like I'm not going to have a roof over my head, or just all these worst case scenarios. And that's also what I see with clients as well. And what's really interesting in divorce to me is, like, last week I was in a mediation with a client, and this couple had a $10 million marital estate. I mean, even after like debt was considered, like if they paid off all their debt, they would have $10 million. And my client was so fearful, still is so fearful. And it's that like constant, like thinking worst case scenario, and truly does not feel security and like they are going to be okay. And what's interesting is the level of fear is the same with these high asset clients and the folks who really don't have much.
Yeah.
And so that's just interesting because it's not logical. It is something just in our minds making us feel so fearful. And, I think it's great for us to be talking through, like, how do you move past that fear?
I feel it's a normal functioning of the mind and the human experience, what one might call the ego. And it, your limbic system, as well, as I mentioned earlier, is constantly assessing your environment and tagging experiences as safe, threat, not a threat. And you have this bank of information that's constantly being stored for your survival. But the wires get crossed, and the ego functioning of our mind wants to keep us separate from knowing that we are innately whole and safe. So you're either, under this influence of feeling connected, that's why people meditate, so they can quiet the mind of all those thoughts, or the ego's running and you're filtering your thoughts through that ego system, which wants to keep you separate. Hey, this isn't safe. So-and-so said this. You're going to look like a fool. You're not going to be loved. You're not going to be seen. You're not going to be accepted, those core things. So you have the ego functioning of the mind that is part of being human. And then you have your life history that each person has experienced and imprinted upon. And the brain has filed and tagged, this is safe, this is not safe. So that's stored in a memory bank that isn't always accessible. And then I say, imagine the limbic system is a satellite that's existing outside of your mind, and it's sensing your environments to a very high degree. And then it's sending you signals back to say whether you are safe or not. And you are constantly filtering this. And the momentum of life is getting faster and faster. There's so many things, we have access to so much information now. And so we're being inundated. Then coupling, as we get older, especially as women, we have the capacity to hold stress in our body. And when we're younger, that capacity is much more tolerable. We're more stress tolerant, but that container in our bodies that are designed to hold the stress actually gets smaller as we age. And so then when we don't have any life skills to be able to, let's say, scoop the stress out of that container,
right?
And then life and momentum is picking up space. And then, now we have these major points of contraction, divorce, parents passing, children, graduating or maybe becoming adults and having their own life problems. Your contractions are happening, that container's getting smaller, and it's pouring into our bodies, causing dis-ease. We're not able to find that spot. So anxiousness will be a result of that. But then we're not taught the life skills to be able to manage that. And sometimes we're doing things that are exacerbating the problem. And so I feel it's a very loving thing to do, to imagine the worst case scenario. It's the part of you that's trying to figure it out. But if you think of every day you come into the world, you wake up in bed and you have 3 pairs of glasses. You have the past. One pair of glasses is the past, one is the future, and then one is now. We only have power in the now. And we tend to always reach for either the past or the future lens, which is dictating where we're taking the action, where we keep creating the same, Groundhog Day experiences or even Groundhog Day thoughts over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So it's learning a life skill that you can use and why we are taking this action. And then how do we go to the root of it instead of staying on the surface. So it's a very loving thing that your mind is trying to do to help you. And when you start to see that and you start to have curiosity instead of the pressure to feel like you need to control it or make it go away, we can't make it go away. It just keeps coming back stronger and stronger. So it's literally this embracing and this pulling in of what the thing is we're trying to resist. And becoming curious can create the space to be able to move through it. It's like a door with infinite walls on either side. You literally have to walk through that door. And that's through emotional processing, like understanding, well, there's a message here in this emotional reaction.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that we don't even recognize when we're catastrophizing and that it is not healthy. Like in my observations, it's like, clients see it as I'm planning,
right,
or I'm waiting for clarity. I'm waiting for the right timing. But really, it's their mind is in this loop of coming up with the worst case scenario, and it's just keeping them in analysis paralysis. Like they just get stuck. Yeah. So I guess the first thing is, how do you recognize if you're planning or are you catastrophizing?
Yeah. Well, I guide clients to the making decisions from an empowered place. And a lot of people, it's irresponsible to not plan or, like you said, try to protect myself. And it's really an illusion. Like that planning for the future is like, it really never gets here. And you will only have the ability to make decisions in the now moment. But yeah. We're so disconnected from our bodies. We valued logic for hundreds of years and gaining more knowledge. And now we're seeing with the onset of AI, and all of this technology that this is not going to be as valued as it once was, which leads us back into sharing our natural gifts that we have come here to share. And I feel an embodiment. Nothing can take the place of an embodied experience. Two people getting together and hugging each other or communing or connecting energetically. AI isn't going to take that away. It's the actual allowing us to embody the human experience. So to answer your question, I encourage people to get in touch with their bodies and what the message of the body is trying to give them. So if they're in a state and they're trying to make decisions, I encourage not making a decision from a desperate place. You will feel that as contraction in your body. So simplifying it very easily is getting back to this natural, what one might say, intuition of the body or wisdom. I like to say it's the wisdom of the body. You can know something all day long, but until it's embodied, it's not wisdom. You can't act upon it until it's in the body. So getting used to the body and saying, I've got to make this decision. Well, do you feel expansion? Do you feel openness? Does it feel light? Does it feel like you're being pulled towards something? Or are you in this state of contraction and stress?
And emotion, yeah.
Yeah. And being controlled by, I say, being led by inspiration, that is your true self, versus being pushed by desperation. Or being drawn to love versus fear. You can look at it either way. But having a tool that allows you to be in your body. It could feel very scary for people to be in their body or not rely, the distance between the head and the heart, and finding that coherence between the mind and the heart is where we all want to be. That's where we feel our power.
Yeah. And I was going to give an example for myself, right? So I tend to be very an anxious attachment if we're talking about in the dating and relationship styles, and where I've really worked with you. And I feel like it's been super helpful is, when I'm talking to somebody or, exploring dating them, and I send a text message and I don't receive an immediate response. Yeah. And then I'm like, and my mind starts going into this spiraling, right? So this act of thinking of all the worst case scenarios can be in our life, in our career, in our job, but also very much in relationships and in work scenarios.
Yes.
And we have to think like, it's not us, but the more energy we're putting into it and the panic, it's going to energetically make the other person pull back and go away. So you've always encouraged me to say, like, don't just reach out, because I would get into this habit of just sending a, hey, how's it going? Text message every now and then, just to elicit a response. And you would always remind me to do it in a place where I'm feeling like calm. And it's because I want to be playful and flirty. And it's not because I'm trying to control the outcome.
Yes. When the mind goes to the worst case scenario, it's already decided that that's happened.
Yes.
And the power is that the mind can't tell time. It's always now. So if you're thinking the worst case scenario, your body's responding to that. And that's where the panic and the anxiousness comes. So you want to take action to make that go away. We eat the chocolate cake, we take the drink, we do whatever it is. We distract, we shop, we do whatever, insert behavior. So we can't be here with that now moment. And I'm encouraging you to find that and understand that that decision, that's an illusion. The brain has made the decision, but you have to bring it back to the now moment. And using some type of, whether it's meditation, whether it's getting
up and
dancing, some type of embodiment, typically, to get you out of your head, back into the body. And then I use nonlinear movement as well. It's a very feminine practice of dance that uses feminine energy. Feminine energy moves in spirals, waves, circles, and to get you back into the body, where then you have more of your true self accessible to then send that message or have that conversation with your partner or do the work from a place of more alignment with yourself, instead of those fears where I'm not going to be seen, I'm not going to be heard, I'm not going to be loved. And those are imprinted typically, right, from a very early childhood age, where we're getting our core self concept from our parents and our lives and those early interactions that are feeding us who we are and what we need to do to stay safe and loved and accepted.
So am I kind of hearing that you really are wanting to like calm the body, clear the mind, find a way to do that, to be able to then make the decisions going forward from a calm place?
Yeah, a place of alignment or a centeredness where you're not reacting from that fear. And EFT tapping is one way where I imagine those 1950s, 60s little monkeys, like the chimpanzee that like claps the cymbals, the little toys, we have a lot of those going on in our mind, let's say. And they are attached to all different stories, all different experiences, and they're always trying to get our attention. And it literally tapping turns those little monkeys off, and then it creates the space to then make the decisions from the place of alignment, where we want to create, where we feel we actually are co-creating with life, and life just isn't happening to us, and we're in this reactive state where we have to have fear or we think we need to plan. It frees us to be more of our true self and act from intuition. Logic is important, but more women, especially women, we are more of the intuitive feelers, and we feel more powerful when we allow ourselves to access that within ourselves. That is our life force. Talk about radiance. That is what women want. We want to feel that life energy moving through us. We are the creators. And that's what I feel when we are only relying on our mind, especially as feminine embodied beings. We're cutting off our superpower and not sitting back, getting into our body. That's our gift, right?
I was going to say one of the breakthrough moment for me working with you was finding out I had several areas in my life that I felt stuck, that I recognized and I needed to work through. And it was very interesting how we determined the process of finding out the areas of it getting stuck was the same stories that I tell everybody about myself when I meet them, that I'm a single mom and I'm working so hard and, I'm it was in speaking in very lack. And it was these stories that I created that people who've met me don't know that backstory. They only see what's here. But I was going forth telling them what the story was. And then that was what they were creating of me versus just in the now, what I am now and what I want to be. So the biggest part for me that really helped me recognize where I was struggling and where I started changing my whole financial, aspect was I had this belief from a child that I was a burden financially on my parents. And it was incredible that it went back. I could pinpoint the exact moment, and you worked through that scenario with me. And it was, my dad is an immigrant. And so he came to this country when he was 21. And so the financial, his wealth that he earned, and my parents were divorced. And so in his mind, he had I have to pay child support for 3 kids, and they're very expensive. So the time that we spent with him on the weekends, we would go to an arcade. And back then you had, the coins. And I knew in my head that putting dollars into the machine equaled coins. And he kept the coins in his pocket. And we would play games. And when we were finished, I would go back to him for more, and he would say, "Oh no, there's no more." He's like, "You girls are burning holes in my pockets." And as a child, that stuck with me my whole life. And I didn't understand what it meant at the moment. I literally thought there was fire burning holes in his pocket. And I bet you this is related to my fear of fire growing up, because there was times when at night that if he turned the lights off, that I was scared of the dark, but then I was scared if all the lights were on, there's fire. But I had this burden upon myself that I needed to start working as young as I possibly could, from the age of like 11, when you got a catalog and you can go door to door selling gift wrap paper to people. And I needed to work because I was a financial burden. And this was a block that was keeping me stuck in my career when I was at a corporate company for 14 years, that I wasn't able to move beyond it because I had this story. And when we broke through that, I got a promotion. And then all of a sudden I was empowered to seek another career that was a better fit for me. And I started making immediate movements, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
It went back so far and so deep.
Yeah.
So I was curious what other examples you have of that, so that people can relate to some of these stories that you've heard of.
Yeah. Well, women in their bodies is a big one, and how your relationship, how your mother loved herself, or how you felt around your mother, what you saw her, did she criticize her body? Did your mother cry when she tried on clothes? Doesn't mean that you had to be the point of the object that, you need to diet, or it's the imprinting of what was happening. You felt your dad's contraction around money, and you could feel his fear. And you assigned that you were causing that fear, that your joy and your natural expression as a little girl. So the mind creates these symbols of fire and what it means. And they're all, the subconscious works in images and metaphors. So with the body, women, they will hold weight if they felt that competition with their mother, for example, or that they might lose. Like maybe they come from a family where women carried more weight, and they might not belong if they were to lose weight. And so there's this subconscious holding, of, I won't allow myself to not be, like my family. When sometimes that's in finances as well. It can be women with their body. I'll lose these friends because I made them when I was this particular, income level or body. So it can be in anything, but those are the subconscious ways that your brain is trying to love you. And you're like, I don't understand. Like I always say, self-sabotage is misguided self-love. And you go on the diet and you just can't stick with it because there's this thing that just won't let you. It's like a ceiling that just won't let you go because you might not feel safe, loved, or accepted through it. So the list goes on and on. I would say anywhere where you have a repeating pattern of sabotage or a ceiling, whether that's with your income or the partners that you attract or the life that you're wanting to experience, I would look at, I say, the meanings that you're applying. It's all about belief and the stories that are attached to it, because we just keep regurgitating them.
How do you get to the point of, because awareness is really a big thing. So before somebody can even start to address that, I think the biggest part is like, I try to be decently good at realizing, okay, I think I'm stuck in this, and this area. But how do women or people in general who want to make a change get to that point of self-awareness?
And Jeanette kind of touched on that. How do you know? Because you're operating from it. It just is you, right? And that's why I went to the body. When you're in that state of contraction, it's really like any point of suffering, right? If it's causing a pain point, that is not your natural state. Our natural state is of peace and joy, and we know it. That's why we're constantly seeking it through all of these objects and external conditions. So
even just that feeling of fear, or just like that tightness in your chest, or like feeling the pit of your stomach, like any of those.
Yes.
Okay. Like you just need to like really feel in your body, like,
yes,
am I feeling negativity? Yeah. And if you are,
that's attached to this. Yeah. Be curious. What is attached to it? It's just a message. You are not the emotional experience. What happens is we become it, but we are not that. And we lose all of our power to it. And then we're trying to avoid experiencing it. So we suppress it, turn away from it, whatever it is that we do. But if we just have the capacity to be with it, it can give us, I imagine it's like a fortune cookie, and you got to pop open the fortune cookie and get that message from the emotion. But people will say, I can't stand being in my body. What can I do? It's learning to be in the body to receive the information, and it's guiding you. So those points of what I call contraction are the secret, and how do we extract it? And to know any point of pain is not your true self. So it's showing you, it's guiding you. Because I feel this way, I know what I do want, but I'm so drawn. Why? What is my story around this? Why is this important? And that curiosity can create that space before the brain attaches a label of catastrophe. So we're looking to find one, the awareness, feel to the body, then curiosity, instead of automatically applying the label. And if you can't get to that, if you do run with the label for a little bit, at whatever point in the game, you can get back into the driver's seat, is what I say, is going to be beneficial. It never gets too far gone that you can't get it back.
And what I would say too is for me, what I've noticed, and I've even told you this before, where I've had my sessions planned with you, and it's been a particularly like stressful week where I don't feel like myself. And whether it's with work, or I feel overwhelmed by my home in disarray, or I'm not feeling like I'm a good enough mom, or whatever it is. And I find ways to like text you and be like, hey, can we move this? Yeah. Because I'm resisting it, because that's the time when you need to lean in the most, when you feel the resistance. And I think people can't become aware until they face it full on. So then they go to those moments of doom scrolling. And like I've told you many times, where I'm like, I'm so overwhelmed, I just go and like take a nap. And I want to be able to sleep to avoid it. And that doesn't get me anywhere. So then we talked about working on a plan, so that I can feel productive and not overwhelmed. But you have to really sit with it to be able to face it full on.
Right. And nobody teaches us how to do that.
Right.
And, it's a lot of looking at beliefs, stories, identities, and then also having some physical skills to be able to help yourself. Traditional talk therapy, there's nothing wrong with it, and having a safe space to be able to process your thoughts. But sometimes it can keep us stuck in that narrative of being broken and not having the actual physical tools to move beyond it. So it's a combination of everything, having a really safe space where you feel that you can come, noticing, just becoming aware, starting to perceive reality differently. That's where the quantum stuff comes in, Jeanette. Like the skeptical stuff is like, could I be perceiving reality in the wrong way? Is there another way to look at this? And then also adding, actual somatic practices. I feel it's a combination to be able to, to change behavior, because as you can see, you're going to be trying all different ways to get around it, but the very other half of you is screaming that I want something different. So it doesn't make logical sense. Why would we be doing these things, right? Like rescheduling or wanting to take a nap. So Like there isn't just one thing. It's going to be multi-prong approach for sure.
So a lot of this sounds like, okay, this is actual like work that's going to take a while. You're working on yourself. What if you're facing a decision that you have to make by a certain time? Like there's not necessarily time to, do weeks or months of work. Like I'm in a divorce, say the other side is the one who moved forward with it, and you don't feel ready, and you are kind of being forced into these deadlines, or I guess there's a lot of other scenarios where that could happen, where you just have to make a big decision and there's not as much time. So what would you recommend?
I think that's a great question. One of the biggest struggles I think that most human beings, but especially women, are accepting life as it's coming to them, because they believe that if it's not how I expected it, it's going wrong. Something bad is happening. And I say, if it's happening, it's within the law. It is. And it's not bad. We believe that it is. And it's starting to shift the perspective, working with belief that this is happening for me, even though it might be perceived in this moment as an unwanted thing. I can work with it instead of against it. I do not have to fight the flow of life. I can work with it. So first I would help a person find a space of that flow and rhythm with working with life, trying to find something, right, that can ground them in that. And then I would say also that we can't get this wrong. Like that is the thing that women especially, like there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. Yeah. And then we hold ourselves to that standard. And I'm saying either can be okay. It's making a decision from the best place that you can and lining up with that decision over and over and over again. And, knowing that if I made that decision, that's the best that I could do. If you made that decision 10 years ago, that was the best decision you could have made, because that's the decision you made.
And I do think that self-compassion, like I do kind of follow mindfulness and the mindful self-compassion. And I do think that's very important.
Absolutely. Sure. And, you can't hate any part of yourself away. If you have resentment or disappointment about a decision that you made, it's coming to that peace with that part of your life and yourself. It's bringing all of these parts of you back to wholeness. So it's very, very important. And so I would say, yes, it feels like this might take a really long time because you've had...
It actually doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't. Because
one session, I was like immediately in each area.
And if you are targeting more of the somatic experience or the subconscious mind, it can happen a lot faster than just trying to deal with it with the logical mind. So again, perspective, belief, doing the best that you can, taking action, and you can line up with any decision that you make, and nothing is permanent. That's what I always tell my clients,
Yes.
You can always continue to co-create with life, but in that moment you're thinking there's a right, there's a wrong. And so it's taking yourself out of the straitjacket of your belief system.
Yeah.
As best you can.
And I was going to say, that is the misconception when I started working with Greta, and is that I've gone to therapy when I was going through my divorce and just personally outside of that. And I felt good in the moment, but it was almost like I was going there and they were helping me with some tools and different ways to look at things. But the core of my wounds and these issues that I've dealt with and the weight that I've carried for so long, like that wasn't getting handled. So they were giving me things how I could tackle things in the moment, but I kept coming to those scenarios because I had these core beliefs inside of me. And I think what's so interesting in learning this is that your subconscious, all those beliefs that you had, people say like, oh, I'm going to do the work and I'm going to do this better. And you will be good at it for a little bit. And then your brain and your mind's going to bring you back to that comfort state of where you felt, best in that trauma. And it starts recreating those scenarios for you. So each session I had with you, I had immediate growth in those areas. And the energy was passed off to the other people that were involved too. It was like bizarre. Like, I know it sounds all woo woo and everything because my little sister was a non-believer, Alexis. And then she was like, I don't know about this, Tiffany. And then she worked with you for something else. And then she was like, oh my gosh. And it was so interesting, her and my dynamic, because my mom wasn't a very motherly mother and did the best that she could. But my older sister moved out when she was like 14. And then I became the mom and I had that role. And my younger sister, I'm like getting emotional. This is like bizarre. But so I'm like the crybaby of the show. But my younger sister, I think because my mom couldn't show up for her, like she looked at me as the mom. And I put myself in that role. So like, and I'm only 2 years older than her, but it was going through this with her. And like, you know, if my mom wasn't showing up at the school meetings, or like I did my sister's college tour with her because my mom was like, I don't know do I need to go? And I'm like, somebody needs to go and act as the parent, you know?
Yeah.
So I carried that. And then it's funny. It's like a scenario, like, I was going to design my sister's wedding invitations for her. I couldn't. And she held on to that I didn't show up for her because I had just had a baby and I had a C-section. I was dealing with postpartum depression. I didn't realize, but I didn't do that task for her. And she held on to that and resented me for years.
Oh, wow.
Because of it. And I was so confused. I was like, Alexis, it's almost as if you're treating me like I failed you as a mom. And then we found out, yes, that's kind of where it came from. It was as big as and important to her. And I didn't realize and understand in that moment, like, oh, yes, you could just order your invites. Like, you don't understand, I just had a baby, but it was that important to her. But she had viewed me as a mom. Yeah. So I worked through a healing moment where I was seeing my mom in a physical abuse situation with her second husband. And I had to step up and be her protector from her abuser. And I had to make sure that my younger sister would stay asleep, that she wouldn't see everything that was going on. So like I held on to that. Greta, we probably need to do some more work. But it's about the evolution. It's like while you quote unquote heal it in the moment, you're constantly evolving and going through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And families will bring up, you know, our
probably top through it.
Yeah, you can, and it's not wrong to experience your emotion. It's actually showing how much you love your sister, right?
Yeah.
And also, you know, it's helped shape the mother that you wanted to be.
Yeah.
You know, we get tremendous gifts from some of our most traumatic experiences. And then it's just, is this creating pain and suffering? Is this a contraction, or is this an actual awareness of the love that you have for another human being? And you're the one that gets to decide that. And it's going to be in your repeating patterns. If you were going into your life and trying to mother everyone, or holding that burden and putting that pressure on yourself, I'd say this is something to look at. But if this is an expression of understanding that I'm loving another human being, and it's not affecting your life, this emotion is beautiful.
Well, after that, the relationship between Alexis and Ariane and myself, my older sister's Ariane, changed completely. Like, because it was what I worked on with you, but then when she ended up working with you, and it was so bizarre. Like even Ariane and I were both like, wow, because Alexis used to hold back on sharing exciting news to us, almost like as if like a parent, like a child would do with a parent, because you're seeking for the love and appraisal. Whereas with siblings, you should just be able to share and not have any judgment there. But she would hold off on sharing exciting news, or like share that she was pregnant with a baby and like tell Facebook the same day that she told us. And I'm like, we should be told first. But so that really kind of like hurt us in a way. And then it wasn't until I finally understood, I feel as though where it came from with her is that she viewed me, and probably Ariane too, as like that mother role for her, you know, where almost you're like scared to tell news about things for that.
Yeah.
And it changed our whole relationship.
We're all holding the energy. And I say there are no private thoughts. And so when you have grievances and resentment, then imagine like you're throwing these little energetic daggers at people and you're holding it against them and you're like, I'm not telling them that. Why are they still not showing up for me? I don't get it. And it's like, have you ever been in a room with somebody who's angry with you and they don't tell you you're angry? You feel it because we don't need words. And so that inner resentment and anger or whatever you're holding against someone is actually preventing you from getting the connection that you're really craving. So when you start working on that inside of yourself, you are then taking down those energetic shields to allow connection to take place for people to actually come forward and support you or communicate with you. That's why I say if you can focus on the emotional and energy part first, it makes the actual human action or interaction a lot more fluid flow coming from the place where you're living in integrity with yourself versus coming from the wound, right? And then especially with families, like you're just going to, everyone, you go home for Thanksgiving, everybody just, it's like you're a zombie. You just get like sucked right back into that role again, unless you have done this type of work. And even if you have, you just kind of feel yourself starting to merge with those old identities and roles. So when multiple, I get, one family I'm working with like 3 people in their family right now.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. Because I get I'll work with husband, wife. I'll work with siblings, parent, child. So, and when, a household is doing something, a lot of magic can happen. And it is hard to explain. But the improvement is in, like you're saying, what you are getting to experience, like the true, your connection is increasing instead of all of the stories.
I think you mentioned something interesting there about the holidays. And I remember saying like, if you don't want to show up for a family thing, you shouldn't have to feel as though you do. If it doesn't bring you peace and joy, it's completely okay to have a relationship from afar.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you can still love someone without proximity. It doesn't mean that you have to be with somebody, what we're taught is to give up our own internal guidance system and sacrifice because that's what love is. But sometimes love is actually not being in proximity with that individual because we're not able to stay true to ourselves or bring the best version of ourselves forward. Maybe I can only hold that energy within myself for an hour or a day. So I know, hey, I'm going to visit, but it's going to be for an hour. It's going to be for a day. And just starting to know yourself in that way. For sure.
Yeah. So how can people start to create this new story for themselves just on their own? What are some tips that you could give them?
Well, let's see. Well, first, when it's a true heart's desire, I would say start to examine the things that you're wanting to create in life and what you're wanting to experience. And ask yourself, is this coming from lack of thinking, if I'm going to get this experience or have this experience, then I'll feel complete?
And give some examples of that, like real life where people go through that.
I want the relationship because I feel so lonely, right? Or I want the relationship because I have so much love to give and I'm wanting to give love, right? I want to escape this feeling of loneliness. I'm afraid that I'll be alone for the rest of my life versus I have gifts to share. I want to nurture. I want to care. That when it's a true heart's desire, it's coming from the power. I want to lose weight because I'm so ashamed of my body. Or I want to feel the way my body can move and experience life. And it's not wrong to have an egoic start or a fear-based desire to get you in the game. That typically gets you in the game. But unless it's transmuted along the way from fear or lack to love or knowing, you're going to experience it. You're going to get in the relationship and you're still going to feel lonely. You're going to get that body and you're not going to feel any different. Or you won't be able to have the capacity to hold it any. It's not going to stay in your life. So I would say the first thing is, can I get clear on, is this a real heart's desire? Is it coming from the power of my heart versus a belief in the ego that I need to get this thing in order to complete myself? And so many people don't know that they're being driven. And I would say that leads to anxiety, that leads to external attachment, that leads to feeling like I need to be in control, and all these negative emotions then keep recycling. But when we're being led by the heart from the beginning, or at least being able to say, I'm being led, oh, there's that ego of separation, you start to feel the difference. You're going to experience the journey differently. So that would be, I think, if I could simplify anyone, if they're trying to create something in their life, if they have a big goal that they want to, is can you get in touch with what the essence of that? Why do I want it, and what is the essence? And when you start moving and making and building a life around the essence of it, you're going to open up to all different ways that it can come to you.
And do you recommend, for example, I know you've given me a homework at times before, just to making the list of the...
Yeah, you can. I feel journaling is a great way to get clarity, because sometimes we're ping-ponging around and it just needs an outlet, right? So making a list. I don't feel that like your heart can be measured by a list. There are some things that are just not able to be measured that way. Pros and cons can sometimes get you into into more of a cycling of anxiety. So I would say, if you're going to make a list of your values. And what do I really value in my life? Is it time? Is it connection? Is it freedom? Is it love? And they're typically going to be adjectives. Is it creativeness? Is it humor? Is it, it's going to be things that are going to transcend objects. They're going to be feeling words. And I would make a list of as many as you value, and then start filtering your decisions through your values. And you will be able to be living more in integrity. And even in Jeanette's question, what if somebody needs to make a decision quickly? If you do know your values, it will help you with that. And you are filtering everything. How can you not get the life that you're wanting to experience when you are making these decisions by your value system instead of your fear?
Yeah, and the quick decisions thing, I think the tip that you've always really helped me with is when you can quiet your mind and just ask yourself that question. And that's where the meditation, it does really help. But finding that time to be at peace with yourself and center, and ask yourself internally or aloud in just a calm environment, a calm mind, I need to make this decision. For example, like I'm going through a divorce and I'm really worried that, my partner XYZ, or I'm really worried that my children, whatever it is, or I'm scared. I want to take this new job, but what's going to happen with this? If you ask that question aloud and get into a really quiet space and ask your mind, like, it comes to you. And for me, I usually sleep on it and I wake up in the morning and it arrives and I feel so good. But it's whatever you believe in, source, God, or anything, just being at quiet and stillness with your mind and trusting. Like you always tell me that, like, if you put your trust, because women, we're so intuitive, but if we just put trust in knowing that it's all going to work out, and allow, like we talk about, like when you're stuck and you don't have space to have more things, but when you're in that worry and anxiety, then those messages from above or from wherever don't come to us.
Yes. So it is understanding, if I'm going to receive something, I have to let something go. If I'm going to hold something more, I have to be willing to, what am I willing to sacrifice? And it's not in a bad way, make sacred, to allow more space to receive what I'm wanting to receive, whether that's intuition. And I would say a good guiding question would be, if I knew I couldn't get this wrong and I knew I wouldn't hurt anyone else, what would I decide here? And that is a good guidepost, because when you're acting from that place, when you are living in your heart's alignment, you really can't, you're not responsible for other people's emotional reactions to you.
Right.
And so we're typically stuck in trying to figure out what other people need from us versus what we're trying to hear. So using that, if I knew I couldn't get this wrong and I knew I wouldn't hurt anybody in the process, what would I choose? And you don't necessarily even have to follow that choice, but it's going to give you insight.
Yeah.
into what is trying to reach you.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Is there any other closing, advice that you would give, a holistic dose of insight or wisdom?
Oh, is that you're far more powerful than what you're giving yourself credit for. And like you said, building that trust muscle within yourself is what you're looking for, is to do the repetitions to find that trust muscle, because we're all wanting to feel our power. And that is building that trust that it's not that I'm going to will it into being, but that I do have the support of life around me. But you've got to have a repetition. You got to try.
Right.
You gotta go to the gym to build the booty. So you have to be able to experience, following your heart, to be able to trust that that is accessible and does work for you. So,
yeah, I love that. And also, I think that this is something that Jeanette mentioned in one of our earlier episodes, that like your worst case scenario is probably never going to happen.
Yeah.
And but staying stuck guarantees that nothing is going to change. So that's really something that I always tell people all the time when they're worried about things. I'm like, yeah, you could do it, you could fail, but what if you succeed?
yeah.
And something Greta brought up is really just the ability to pivot. Like, we think this is like a permanent decision, and it's not. If we make the decision and it's not quite right, then we tweak things, then we go a different route. And that's something I've really had to teach myself is, look, even if this is the wrong decision, which I don't really think there are, the right and wrong, but even if this was the wrong decision, so what? I learn lessons from it, and then I make changes.
And that I had to make that decision in order to get that curriculum, learn the lesson. I say we never get it, never get it wrong, and we never get it done. If you think there's some end destination here, we never get there.
Absolutely. And just the self-compassion and knowing like I made the best decision I could at the time with the information I had, and moving on from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So if people want to reach out to you, Greta, and connect more, we'll put this in the show notes, but where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Greta Zukoff, and they can find me at gretazukoff.com. I'm also on Facebook. There's only one Greta Zukoff, so it's kind of easy to find me.
The one and only.
Yeah.
Definitely. So thanks so much for hanging out with us. So make sure to keep listening and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at Holistic Dose on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for more fun. And visit our website at aholisticdose.com. So thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back next week with more unfiltered friend talk right here on A Holistic Dose. And thank you, Greta, for
Thank you, Greta.
Thank you.
Bye.